one needs to understand that Hamlet is a drama. It was not written to be read in a classroom, actually. Don't think Shakespeare would have been happy with that. It was written for an audience. And that is a very important mechanism for you to understand when thinking about the drama. On the screen, you will see a picture of the Globe Theatre, the theatre which was Shakespeare's home, the theatre where people went to be entertained. They went for the drama of it all. It was the soap opera of the day. It was Generations, it was Isidingo, it was Sievendelon, it was everything. But there were layers in the audience, and Shakespeare was aware of that. And when you are responding to Hamlet, you need to realize that his plays were aimed at the three layers. At the top, the aristocracy, the lords, the ladies, the kings, the queens. In the middle, literally the middle. And at the bottom, the groundlings. They paid a penny and they loved the drama of it all. So from this first slide, the concept of a play being performed to an audience in a very interactive fashion. So when you are writing about the play, make sure that you talk about yourself as the audience. Never mention the reader. Shakespeare would be horrified. He wrote it for an audience. So let's go to that next slide. There are some important dramatic techniques with which you must be familiar, particularly with this play. The first one is the concept of the soliloquy. And hopefully you have heard about the soliloquy before. The character is alone on the stage, solely, S-O-L-I, and he's speaking to the audience. He is sharing his thoughts, his feelings, his fears, his frustrations with the audience. And we know that our friend Hamlet does this often, a lot. A long speech addressed to other characters on the stage is what we call the monologue, one character. And of course, if you've read your play and you understand your characters, then the character of Polonius is given to monologuing, unfortunately. One of the most important mechanisms for Hamlet, particularly in the opening lines of the play, is the aside, where quite literally he would go to the side of the stage or speak at the side of his mouth to the audience to share his thoughts with the audience. And in the beginning of this play, Hamlet is glowering in a corner, a little less kin than kind, he says to the audience, because of his fury with this Claudius, who has just turned his life completely upside down. So you do need to be familiar with those techniques, understand how Shakespeare would use them in interacting with his audience. This, of course, sets up another important concept in a Shakespearean drama, and that's the concept of dramatic irony, the tension that is created between the audience and the characters when the audience knows something that majority of characters on stage do not know, and that creates the tension. So, grade 12s, if you get a question on dramatic irony and you mention the audience, you have already engaged with that question. Please remember that. Mention the audience, because they are there to create that particular brand of irony. Then obviously some important things. This is a play, so you need to understand how characters would move. Where would they move? Where would they be positioned on the stage? I want to talk particularly about the second bullet here, the types of body language. There will always be a question in the contextuals where you are asked to be a director for a moment of the play, and you are asked, how would you direct a particular character? There is a question, we're going to look at that question. But you need to practice gathering words, vocabulary, diction around describing a character's body language. Are their shoulders hunched? Are their fists clenched? Do they have their hands on their hips? And what is it telling us about how they are feeling? And we will look specifically at that issue when we get to that slide. Remember that, as in all Shakespeare plays, the plays are built on the concept of a scene, and the scenes are grouped into acts. So our word-for-word strip there shows you the different forms of the scenes, but you need to know in your heart how the scenes work in the plays and how they are matched against each other, and is there a reason for a particular scene at a particular time. I think that's also really important. One of the things that comes up in the Matric Paper is, have you differentiated in your head between the play, Hamlet, put into inverted commas, that is the title of the play, versus Hamlet, the protagonist, the main character. So if you're going to write an essay or a contextual question and you're referring to the play, you must do that with the title. Otherwise, the answers become nonsensical. Then you're saying that the person is a tragedy, which is not really what you meant at all. It's obviously really very important that you know who your main characters in the play are and who are your antagonists, who is on Hamlet's side, who is working against Hamlet. You'll see the ghost up there. Shakespeare's audience would have been fascinated with the idea of a ghost, because for them, a ghost suggested something restless, something not right. And Marcellus says something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and the ghost is an example of that. When you are looking, I have grouped the characters on the stage on the screen, for a particular reason, where Hamlet's family at the top, Hamlet's only real friend, Horatio. I have put Rosencrantz and Guildenstern into red because they betray Hamlet in the worst possible way. They betray his friendship and they betray his trust. There are also, grade 12 learners, many parallels in your dramatis personae with the father-son relationships. So the ghost and Hamlet, Claudius and Hamlet. You have Polonius and Laertes, and of course Fortinbras defending the memory of his father. So you need to think of these as people. This is family politics that's going on in this play, and they all knock and reverberate off each other. What you will notice on this particular slide is the two ladies. There are only two, Gertrude and Ophelia. And it is really important when you are studying this play and revising the play to think of the fact that I have presented quite literally in coloured formation a patriarchal society, and you will be expected to be able to understand and write about a male-dominated society, a patriarchy where women have a particular role to play and have particular responsibilities. One of the questions that is often asked is, Ophelia, what happens to Ophelia? What drives Ophelia to her totally detached state? And to what extent is Hamlet responsible for what happens to Ophelia? So you need to look at the woman. You need to consider Gertrude. Gertrude is an interesting character. Does she marry Claudius out of lust? Does she marry Claudius because her position as queen is then guaranteed? Is she just very shrewd? There are so many debates that you can have around the character of Gertrude. But the two ladies are really important in this exercise. It is also a tragic play. It's a tragedy. You need to please make sure that you understand that it is a tragedy, that he is a tragic hero, that he's undone by his hubris, his hamartia. If you're not familiar with these terms, you need to take them back to your teachers and explore them and find out more. But hamartia particularly is your inability to make the right judgment, or something which is preventing you from making the right judgment or doing the right thing. Something which is, your character is flawed, it's hurting your character. I think you know by now that Hamlet procrastinates. We all procrastinate. But why does Hamlet procrastinate? What is it that is making him do it, and how is it affecting everything that he does? But if you write an entire essay without mentioning the fact that this is a tragedy, he is a tragic hero, then you haven't really grasped the genre of this play. It is a tragedy. It's about a great man with great potential who is driven to his own destruction by circumstances which are partially within his control and partially not. Internal conflict, external conflict. So lots to think about with the character of Hamlet. The definition of tragedy is there from Aristotle. It depicts the downfall of basically a good person through some error or misjudgment, producing suffering and insight on the part of the protagonist, which Hamlet does experience, and arousing pity and fear on the part of the audience. And I wanted to show you that slide particularly because one of the questions that was asked at the end of 2018 was, to what extent does the audience feel pity for Hamlet? So it is something for you to consider in your understanding of exactly what a tragic play is all about.